Sloan from the Civic and Community Engagement Committee from YEP, and today we are doing a Q&A session with Representative Bob Merski, and we also have Shema and Blaine here from the committee to ask some questions. So if everyone could go around and introduce themselves. Oh, we'll start with Shema first.
Hey, my name's Shema Musa. I'm in AmeriCorps Vista with the Mercy Center for Women. I actually just joined YEP in November, so I'm still kind of getting my bearings and getting familiar with the territory and things. But I'm super excited to be here.
And then Blaine.
Hi, I'm Blaine Bruning. I'm a mechanical design engineer with Airborne out in Lake City, Pennsylvania. And yeah, I've been part of YEP for now, I think a year and a couple months. Actually moved up here from the Harrisburg area, so, wanted to jump in and get involved.
And then I'm actually an analytical chemist and quality technician at Plastic Services Network. So that's what I do. So now Representative Merski, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. A little bit about myself. I'm a state representative. My career before that was a teacher. I taught in Erie's Catholic and then public schools. I did spend one year in Brooklyn, New York teaching and 1 year in Corey, Pennsylvania teaching. And but education's at the heart of my career and where my passions were. And while I was a teacher, much like you guys, when I was your age, I wanted to get involved. And so a lot of my friends were in Young Erie Professionals, and I joined, and I was actually co-chair of the Civic Engagement Committee when I was in YEP, and we had the state convention when I was involved as well, which was really cool, and married with a little boy, 5 years old, Robert, and my wife's Emily. She was also in Young Erie Professionals. She's a little younger than me though, so we didn't coincide when we were involved together. And then we have a daughter on the way in about a month, so it's coming up fast. And then just a little bit about myself. How I got involved in the community was just through YEP Civic Engagement, and I bought a house over by Mercyhurst College University now, and the kids were just like, I couldn't get, I had to work in the morning and kids were partying. And so I started a neighborhood watch with a bunch of the neighbors. And we started working with the city on trying to get some solutions. And I was frustrated with the red tape. So I decided there was an appointment for city council. I put in for it. I made it to the final four and I didn't make it. And my buddy was like, screw them, they're wrong. We're gonna run and we're gonna beat them. And so I did, and then we ran, and I was on city council then for 7 years, and that was an eye opener because, you thought that you were going to go on and change the world, so to speak, or at least change the city, and you realize then like how slow government moves and how you have to build consensus, and really a lot of it is state money and federal money, that the resources just aren't here in the local community to do those transformational projects that people talk about. And but I enjoyed my time on there. One of the things that I loved about it most on municipal government, local government, was that you can make a direct impact on someone. So for example, let's say water main breaks in front of your house, you know who to call and get it fixed immediately for them. Or if there's a snow issue or a garbage issue, or those types of things. And it's the level of government where you have the most direct interaction with the folks in your community. And I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed it so much I ran for mayor, and I came in second place in the primary in I believe there were 6 people running at the time. So lost to Mayor Schember. And after that, I was pretty much just going to stay on city council. It was in the middle of my term, and then and just be comfortable with that, and be a teacher. I was teaching at the time at Collegiate Academy, AP World History and AP European History, and then freshman geography. And then Representative Fabrizio got sick with pancreatic cancer. and he decided not to run again. And I just lost that previous May, and HDCC, which is the House Democratic Campaign Committee, reached out to me and asked if I'd consider running. And how do I say this? After you lose, it's very hard to just jump back in. It's like once you get knocked down, it's hard to get back up. Um, so I prayed on it. I talked to my wife. That was the first one. Because if you do this and you have a spouse, or when I ran for city council the first time, we just started dating, and so, but at this point we were married, and she was on board, and I just said, if everything aligns, then I'll do it. And the first thing that needed to align was Representative Fabrizio's blessing to do it, and so he said he'd think about it when I went and asked him about it, and he came back like a week or two later and said, I think you'd be good at it, and he gave me his blessing and his endorsement. And I got the endorsement of my colleagues, county executive, the mayor, and most of county council. And so we ran the race. We ran a 3-way race, and here we are. We got 48% of the vote in a 3-way race, and then we ran in the primary and got almost 60% of the vote. 63%, I believe, is what we got. And so I was off to Harrisburg, and it's I enjoy what I do. In Harrisburg mostly, and we'll talk about this a little bit, I think, at the questions, but every other week I'm there I leave Sunday, come back late Wednesday night. You try to make it home to put my kid to bed, but sometimes I make it, sometimes I don't. And then I'm in town Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, and then Sunday morning. But that's me in a nutshell. Some of my hobbies that I like to do, I like to lift weights. With the COVID, it's been hard, and like to spend time with my family. Like to go down to the beach. My son, we got into a habit of just walking along the shoreline and collecting beach glass, and so we have a big jar of beach glass, and then just watching him grow, trying to teach him some sports and that kind of thing. So just living family life and trying to be as much in the community. It's hard during COVID, and then spend time with my family.
So since you mentioned that you were once a YEP member, what was your membership like when you were active?
It was really it was strong. I think it was we had some very good people, and they actually have become lifelong friends of ours. And one of the things that was YEP was really new when I got involved. It was probably less than 5 years old, and so we had the remnants of that first crew, that the originators and the founders. They were still involved, but then it was like the second wave, which kind of I was a part of. And I wasn't an officer or anything like that. I was much more on the periphery of it. But I enjoyed it. I met a lot of great people through it. And one of the things that I think was lacking in the Erie community was an attention to the needs of young professionals. It was a time of the brain drain, if you will, and everyone was addressing the fact that so many young people were leaving Erie. And it was nice to have a cohort of people who were committed to this community, who wanted to stay and make a difference. And, so there was an energy there that was exciting. And as, as we did things, a lot of things it was the first time someone was doing them, or it was, and I don't know if you even do have, some of these things anymore, but like the toy drive at the Christmas time, when we wrapped the gifts and that kind of thing. And then it was actually a clearinghouse for a lot of nonprofits to get a young person on the board. And that was like our big push at that point, was trying to get young people involved in the community in decision-making positions. And so the way that we thought would be the best to do that was through the nonprofits, since we have a healthy nonprofit sector in this community. And so a lot of folks went that route. I didn't go that route too, really was on a small board, but Erie Arts Opportunity was the name of the board. But it was an exciting time. It was fun. And like I said, a lot of the people that that I met through YEP, I'm still friends with today. And most of them have stayed in Erie. So it was an exciting time and it was a fun time. And definitely the people that you're meeting here are going to be influential in your future in some way, shape, or form.
I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what does a typical work day look like for you?
Oh, well, typical is if I'm in town, it starts off with, getting my kid breakfast and getting my wife and I share duties of like getting him ready, and then mostly her, I'm going to be honest. And then, but usually if I'm home, I drive him to school and then I come to work after that. And I'm here in the office, usually answering calls. Either, there'll be emails from the night before. We go through those if there's any that need to be, some of them the staff can answer, but then some are directed towards me, or we don't, it's a more nuanced answer. And so we talk about that. We plan for, outreach events. We plan for legislation that we want to introduce, and then just respond to the needs of the community that way. And then, a lot of times you get invitations to things. And so you're on Zoom meetings like every day. There's at least one or two Zoom meetings, either through House policy, House budget. Everything's been COVID this past year. So every day there's a COVID meeting or a COVID, debrief via email that you have to, analyze. And then I try to get that information out. And then the big part of the job that, it doesn't really shut off is social media and just putting content out. And then I tend to respond to people probably more than I should. But, trying to be engaged as much as you can. And then when I'm in Harrisburg, and then the day ends. Before COVID, there would always be something at night. So going to a neighborhood watch meeting, West Bayfront, or, Glenwood Hills, or, the Mercihurst area. There was always something going on in the evening. And so some of that stuff I would take my family to, some I wouldn't. And then you just try to get involved, even if there's nothing, 8 Great Tuesdays, you would just go and just listen to people, listen and enjoy the city and be a part of the community, because I think that's just as important. And then when I'm in Harrisburg, the day starts, usually, I stay at a hotel and I stay, then drive to work and take meetings. Well, now with COVID, everything's Zoom, but before COVID, you would take meetings from like 9 o'clock until 11. Then session starts at 11 o'clock. You start with the prayer and the pledge, and then you break off into your committee assignments, or the Democratic caucus will meet and the Republican caucus will meet. We go over all the bills that are on the vote either for that day or the following day. And we go through them all. We get the pros, the cons, who's for it, who's against it. We talk about them, we debate them, discuss them. And then we come back to the House floor, usually around 2 o'clock, all depends. And then you're on the floor till you get through your votes and the debate. So, and then you try to grab a bite to eat and go back to the hotel. And so it's, when I'm down there, because we're down there, just for 3 working days, everything's packed in real tight. So there's not a lot of downtime really.
Thanks for that. So kind of to shift up to Erie, what are your favorite things like to do in Erie, or your favorite thing about Erie in general?
Well, I thought about this a little bit, and there's so much, but my favorite things are summer in Erie. Obviously, I'm not a winter person. I like snow, but I don't ski. I don't ice fish. I do like Wintergreen Gorge. Now that I have a family, it's different too. Like when I was younger, you liked different things, much more of a social life and a nightlife. And, I liked going out to the bars and stuff. And Erie is very cheap to drink. When I had friends from Brooklyn that came in, they were amazed at how like dollar import night and stuff like that. So, but now that I have a family, we take walks in Wintergreen Gorge. We go down to the beach, search for beach glass, that kind of stuff. We teaching my kid how to ride a bike, and then just enjoying, some of the things that are quintessential Erie, getting a orange twist ice cream cone, and then just going to the zoo. We have a lot of amenities, so I try to keep my kids busy, but also I enjoy those things as well. And then the other thing too that I think in terms of Erie, is that there's so much to do that is cheap or free. And so like in the summertime, 8 Great Tuesdays and that kind of thing, where you can go out and enjoy the church festivals, the ethnic festivals, Italian festival, Greek festival, Polish festival, all the festivals that are out there. I enjoy that so much, and that's part of the fabric of this community. And that's, to me, that summertime is I enjoy it so much.
So to go kind of back to bills and policy, what is one bill or policy that benefits Erie County citizens, but it's lacking in public support, and you feel like people aren't really talking about it?
Well, there's really, everyone wants money, and I think that's one of the things that's very, um, it's frustrating. There's a big need for Erie's public schools to be fully funded. They're probably about $28 million shy, maybe 30 million shy of what they should get to be made whole. The problem is, where do you find the revenue? And um, when you raise taxes on people, they want to see something for their dollar, and it's hard to make those decisions. One of the things that I think is a simple way to raise revenue that nobody's looking at, or it's not on the agenda right now, is two things. One is taxing the Marcellus Shale, which is in the governor's proposal for this next budget. And the other thing is the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, and then charging a tax for that. My personal opinion on that would be to sell it out of the state stores. We already have the mechanisms to keep it safe, keep it secure. But there's some proposals out there to treat it like a tomato plant and just let you grow it in your backyard. That's a little too loose for me, personally, but I think those are some of the things that we really need to take a look at, because it's at the point now where Pennsylvania is behind the curve. Like New Jersey already has done this. And so if you're in that Philadelphia area, you can go to New Jersey and it's legal, and then you come to Pennsylvania and it's not. And so people are going to New Jersey to purchase it legally, and then driving across the bridge and bringing it back over. And we're missing out on all that revenue. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing too is, using some of the revenue from that for the folks who are concerned about addiction issues. We don't have enough money for addiction treatment right now. So you could use some of that revenue from the legalization of marijuana to pay for those addiction programs and getting that treatment for folks. And I think that's, I'm trying to think which state it was, somewhere out west, either like Oregon or one of them just decriminalized all drugs, and everything now is just treatment based. It's not criminal based. And so you see those things happening in other states. To me, it's low hanging fruit. The problem is the way our legislature is set up. The Republicans, and it's not an issue of Republican versus Democrat, but the conservatives rule in both the House and Senate, so that none of these will even come up for a vote, because the Republicans control the House and control the Senate. So I could put the bill in tomorrow and it'll just sit there. No one will vote on it. It won't get assigned to a committee. If it gets assigned to a committee, it will never come up for a hearing in the committee or for a vote in the committee. And that's the frustrating thing, because you can't cut your way to prosperity. I look at it like if you want to get in shape, you have to diet and exercise. You got to do both. You can't just cut and then not raise revenue. You got to do both. And I'm not like a big tax and spend liberal, but at the same time, I was on city council when money was tight. And so you ran things as frugally as possible while providing basic services, but you also kept in mind that there's a value when you have to raise revenue. You have to do it so that you don't put everything on the credit card. We've seen what happens when you do that, when you have deficit spending, and you can't use one-time gimmicks perpetually. There's only so much money in the recycling fund that we've been rating. There's only so much money right now. This past year we rated the pension fund for retirees and took money out of there. And so there's only so much of that you can do. There's going to have come a point where you have to responsibly balance the budget and make some cuts to things that maybe you don't necessarily need. But when it comes to the basics, though, I think it's important to make sure that we fully fund public schools. That's in our state constitution. And I think for the city of Erie, that would be a huge asset. And I don't think we talk about it enough because they got that $14 million and they're still underfunded, but they're not underfunded as much as they were before. And the other thing that I think is really important that we need to look at is comprehensive municipal reform. Cities like Erie are hurting all across the Commonwealth: York, Reading, Allentown, Scranton, these medium-sized cities. And we lump them in with, and the Corries and the St. Mary's and the smaller cities. They're all third-class cities, so the same rules apply. And we really need to look at carving out something for those folks so that they're able to generate revenue so that they don't go bankrupt. Because what ends up happening is the state comes in and has to bail them out. And that's where the city is right now with deficit spending. When I left city council, we had, I think, a $12 million surplus. Now they run deficits every year. And so, and that's only been in 3 years. So, it goes fast and it comes at you hard. So I think those are the two things that I think we need to talk about: school, fair funding for schools, and comprehensive municipal reform.
Well, that's fantastic to hear some of that. As my dad's a civil engineer, worked on a couple township boards, and anything municipal related, he's always for. But in particular, the question I have came from one of our members, and it's actually not a three-part question, but we pared it down to one. Portions of Erie County are below the national average in terms of life expectancy. And for example, for someone living in the 16501 in the surrounding zip code, it's roughly 63 years of age as the average, where the national is 79. With that in consideration, what are some PA health issues you would like to support, or amendments to current bills or legislation that you would like to enact for improvement of local health?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to talk about universal health care for folks. I mean, a lot of those folks, they just can't afford health insurance. And so that's why they're dying young. The other thing is our infant mortality rate is abysmal for a developed country, not just in Erie County, but the United States as a whole. We need to address maternal health. I think that's very important. How you take care of your most vulnerable citizens, I think, is a moral judgment. And so to make sure that we take care of our infants and their mothers, I think is so important. And let's start there. I think, if we can't get to universal health care, we have the CHIP program in Pennsylvania, but let's focus on maternal health, and let's get these women the proper prenatal care that they need so that they have healthy, developed babies. Because if you start out behind from the beginning, your life expectancy is already at a disadvantage from that. The other thing too that I think is important is nutrition, and we don't talk about enough this in this country at all. And but if you look at our inner city areas, they're food deserts, and also just in this country as a whole, the cost of eating healthy is much more expensive than the cost of eating unhealthily, or healthless foods. So they're not even foods. That's what the one nutritionist told me. She goes, and I have nothing against Doritos, I like them, but Doritos are not food. She goes, look at the back of the box. It's just chemicals, and it's all processed. But an apple costs more money than a bag of chips. And so when you have limited income and your resources are used to pay your gas, your electric, and your rent, and what's left over is what you have to eat with, you're going to eat that's going with stuff that's going to fill your belly for the cheapest price possible. So we have to make sure that we're addressing that food insecurity, and we're addressing the nutritional value of the food that people get. I think that's one thing that government can do as a policy. And I think the other thing too is just I really like what they're doing in Corey with the blue zones. And I think that's something that I've spoken with County Executive Dahlkemper casually about it briefly, but looking at expanding that blue zones program countywide, I think is important to get those healthful habits out into the community and get people, the groupthink of the community to think more in a healthful way. I think would go a long way. And it's tough. And the other thing too that we have to do in Erie, which some people do, and it's more now than before, is to embrace all four seasons. Everyone's outside in the summertime, but in the wintertime, COVID brought people out because everyone was, quarantined in March, and I never saw that many people walking in Erie in March in my entire life. But it was a good thing in that sense, is it got people out, it got them moving. And even though you couldn't really hang out with people, you got to wave to them and say hello. So to get people moving, I think, is just as important. We lead a sedentary lifestyle. We need to get up and go. So I think if we do those things, as a policy, but I think locally, so many of those are tied to poverty. So many of them are tied to poverty. And when you have, and not everyone focuses on 16501, but the reality is 16501 is also poor by design. We built in the 60s, and I say we, I wasn't, none of us were born, but the city designed it so that all the social services, all the homeless shelters are downtown. Well, all those people count as $0 for income. So that skews it already. Then you have the senior high rises and the high rises for folks with disabilities that are downtown. And there's at least 3 or 4 of them. Then you take the Erie Housing Authority high rises, which are in the downtown area. And all of that's in 16501. And so when you concentrate everybody who's on fixed income and put them in one neighborhood, naturally it's going to have a low income level. I mean, that's the way you built it. If you build it that, people need a place to stay, they're going to stay where they can afford it. And you put it all in one area. And that was what people did back then. There was a lot of federal money for that. The new way of looking at things is to spread income levels of folks with different income levels across your community, and have that much like a New York City, where you have, everyone's just kind of cross-pollinating, within blocks, there's people with different income levels and different housing levels. They chop up, old places and make little apartments and that kind of thing. So, I think a lot of that 16501 is by design, but we also have 16503 and 16504, which is where I grew up. That was my old neighborhood as a kid. And they've changed so much as manufacturing has gone, Hammer Mill's gone, American Meter, all these places, GE's, half of what it was, 10% compared to when my parents were young. All those middle-class folks left that area, and there's very few middle-class folks left in those areas. And so we have to make sure that as we build a new Erie, we provide opportunities for them to advance. And I think that starts first, though, with what we talked about with the school funding. It starts at elementary and middle and high school. If you don't graduate from high school, and I'm a proponent of the community college, if it's done right. But I've said this from the beginning. If you didn't pass high school, what makes you think you're going to go to community college? You're not. We have 25% of the kids in Erie School District not passing on time. I don't know if that's changed since I left, but it was about 25% weren't graduating within 4 years. And so that's where I think we need to put our focus. And I think if we do that, that'll help with all those other things, because it starts there.
Awesome. Well, that's fantastic. Just to hear that it's being thought about and whatnot. So we're finally going to get to the COVID question. It's on everybody's mind. So what in your mind is a solution to assist the recovery of small businesses, specifically restaurants? That can be done through policy or even by the small business owners. So, there's a variety of opinions, but is there a particular one you are attached to?
No, I'm not attached to any one in particular, but I do think there's things that we can do from government's side, but I also think there's things that we can do locally. And I have nothing against our chain restaurants, but there's nothing that irks me more than to see a line out the door at TGI Fridays when we have excellent restaurants, locally owned right here in town, that have empty seats and nobody patronizing them. That blows my mind that we don't take care of our own first. And that's something that we can do. I think from a policy perspective, one of the things that frustrated me the most was, and again, this is the way the House works and the way the Senate works, majority rules, and they run the table. If you're in the majority, you set the agenda. And when they had the votes to take the $1.3 billion in CARES money, and instead of giving it to the restaurants where it should have gone, and this is why I voted no on the budget, instead of giving it to them, they used it to fill the budget. And they said, well, that way we don't have to raise taxes. We don't have to worry about it. We'll just put this money here. That's not what it was for. That money was for those small business owners. That money was for those restaurant owners and the workers who work there, those tip workers and service workers. And so that was really a missed opportunity where the federal government under the Trump administration gave us this money. And instead of using it for what it was intended for, we bent the rules a little bit and said, well, we're going to put it in the health department at the state level because that dealt with COVID. And so that counts. No, that's not what that was for. And now I hope with this second round of relief that's coming from the federal government under the new administration, that we are a little more wise and put that money where it belongs, which I think is in the hands of our small business owners and the people. We did just pass through appropriations and through the House some funding. I think it was 145 million for restaurants, and that will be sent to the county, and then the county will figure out how to administer that grant and distribute that money. But anything we can do on that end, I think, is important, because here's the reality of the situation. The restaurants have been open since July, for the first week of July. They've been allowed to be open, and they shut down right around Christmas time for a little bit. But by and large, they've been open that whole time. People don't feel safe. So that even if they're open at 25% capacity, 50% capacity, very few of those restaurants are turning people away at the door. It's not like, oh, we're jam-packed because we're at 50% capacity. They still have room. It's just that people aren't frequenting. People don't feel safe to go. And so I don't see that going away anytime soon, even with the vaccine. And that's assuming that we get the vaccine, us being, and I consider myself young in this sense, I'm in the younger group for vaccine with you guys. And so we're not going to get it till the summer, if we're lucky, maybe the fall. And so what do these restaurants do in the meantime? And only so many of them have outdoor seating. And you can only do outdoor for so long. Like, you're not going outdoors in this weather. And so these are complex issues. I do think, though, we have an obligation to do what we can. There are some bills out there. For example, taking what's left of the rainy day fund and putting it towards restaurant relief. I'm a co-sponsor of that. Also, there's legislation to do a tax holiday for the restaurants so that they don't have to pay their taxes for this year. But then every time you do something like that, you got to realize there's an equal and opposite reaction on the other side, because then you don't have that revenue coming into the state. And then how do you balance the budget? And under our state constitution, we are mandated to balance our budget every year. We can't run deficit spending like the federal government does. That's why it's so important to get federal relief, because they're able to run deficits, so they can borrow the money and run that deficit where we're not allowed. And so we're going to be looking for relief from our legislators at the federal level for sure.
Okay.
So to bring it back to Erie, Representative Harkins and yourself secured the $23 million for the redevelopment authority, redevelopment assistance capital program, I should say. And within that, there are multiple different grants. Is there a particular grant that you are excited about?
You know, a lot of those, I'm excited about all of them, to be honest, because first off, very few communities of our size got as much money as we got. And part of that commitment was to save the seawolves. And I think that's going to be probably have the biggest long-term impact in Erie. It was the renovation of the UPMC Park, keeping the Erie seawolves here. But I think, you know, for me personally, I really like what the Port Authority is going to be doing. Taking out that, if you've ever been to Liberty Park, moving those boats that are there in front of the park, and they're going to be transforming that area. One of the RCAPs was for that. And I think that's going to be an exciting project. And the other one that I'm really excited about is the Market House over on the waterfront in front of the convention center. I think that has the potential to be a catalyst for new development on that GAF property, private development, by putting that public money in. And I also think that that project is going to lead eventually to a pedestrian bridge from the foot of the top of Sassafras Street over, which I think is desperately needed. So those two on the waterfront there are probably what I would be the most hopeful about. But of course, you know, I love the Seawolves too, and I want them to do well. And I'm glad we got that money committed over 5 years for them. But there's some other good ones in there too. You know, like for example, nuts and bolts ones, Berry Plastics, which is over in Little Italy. They're getting money to clean up. They purchased a site. It had toxic waste and stuff. They're going to clean it up and put a new warehouse there, expand onto their business and hire more people. So that is just as exciting. It's less, you know, I don't want to say, you know, it's less sexy and it's less community oriented, but it's going to put real people to work. And I think that's important too. You know, you got to have a balance of both. But all of those RCAPs though, they're tied to either job creation or transforming a community in some way. And so it's very important. They're used for economic development. And those folks, those are competitive grants, and those folks have to prove or show that they're going to stimulate the economy in some way. And I think that's why I'm excited about them.
Okay, so the last question that we have for you, pull it back up.
What actions would you like to see young
here.
professionals take to positively change the community?
I forgot to unmute myself, and then
No,
in the process of unmuting myself, I lost all the questions.
No worries. No worries.
What advice do you have for young professionals?
You know, Erie is one of the best places for a young professional to make an impact at your age, in your 20s, early 30s. You can come into this town and really make a difference in a way that you can't in a big city. You can't go into a Phoenix or even a Pittsburgh and be our age, your age. I'm not mine anymore, you know, but be in your 20s and just come in, and it's big enough that you have opportunities, but it's small enough that you can make a difference, and people will listen to what you have to say. I always joke around and I say, like, I started really being taken seriously like around 28. Like that's, I feel like people give you like if you're in your early 20s, you're optimistic and you're bright-eyed, and they go, and they'll respect it. But I think they treat you more as an adult. Like once you hit 28, they're like, you're a grown up, you know? And so, but even if you're not, you can make a difference. You know, I started this in I started doing stuff in my 20s. And so that's what I love about this town, is that it's, for the most part, age isn't a factor in holding you back or pushing you forward. If you want to make a difference, there's a place to plug in. Someone will take you. And what I also think is nice about Erie is there's about 2 to 3 degrees of separation. And so because the network is so tight here, um, once you start networking, you can meet a ton of people in this community who really make a difference, and learn from them, absorb everything you can from them, because I think that's really important, because they're not going to be around forever. And we need young people to step up in this community, because you don't stay young forever. And you have a chance to learn from some people who've done some really great things. And I was so fortunate to have those opportunities, and take advantage of that. I think that's what's neat about Erie, is that, it's well within the possibility that you could be in the same room as a billionaire, Tom Hagen from Erie Insurance, in this town. Like, it's that small, where it's not like a big city where there's this big wall of exclusion, and there's like these people hang out here and these people hang out here, and that's it. There's everyone's intermingling in this town because it's so small. And if you get into a network like Young Erie Professionals, it allows you to interact with people who are influencers in the community. And that in turn, once they learn to recognize you and you become familiar to them, you can strike up friendships and professional relationships that will take you far in life. And even if they don't take you far in life, they're just nice to have. It's nice to know that you know the people in your community that are making decisions, and that you can have a conversation with them. I think that's very important. I mean, I don't think of myself that way, but I'm very accessible too. It's that's what's neat about Erie, is it's small enough that you can catch me at the grocery store.
Okay, well, we thank you and appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this with us. Do you have any questions for us or anything else you would like to add?
I just, I had a question, just in terms, a couple questions and just a couple comments, is from your perspective, what do you think I should be doing for Erie? Like, what do you think the state needs to be doing, particularly for young people, but then also in general for the greater Erie community?
That's actually a really good question.
Yeah.
Like, I love that you
I know I
asked
put you on the spot, right?
that.
On the spot.
No, I did not think in like a million years that you'd ask that. I just want to jump on this because this is just discussion that I've had with my friend groups. I recently I graduated in May, so like I graduated during the pandemic, and just I think that a lot of my classmates and a lot of the kids I went to school with are just like, with the pandemic, it's just super hard for employment.
Yeah.
Like, I know kids that have put in like 20, 30 applications, hundreds even, and getting that call back, or it's just so hard right now with businesses and economic development, to like get your foot in the door professionally. So like, I know kids that are like working 2 jobs right now just to support themselves. Like, they have college degrees. I'm in that position as well, where like you have all these certificates and you've done everything that the educational system's told you need to do to succeed, but you feel like you're not getting that. I don't know, you're not reaping the benefits. So definitely, like you said, that funding towards just getting jobs in Erie and stimulating the businesses that we already have here, so that younger people feel like they can stay here without having to like work super hard, to like stay afloat at that basic like just survival level.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I can't even imagine how tough it is right now for young people just entering the workforce, graduating from college, and just seeing that there's nothing there, and you're competing against people who have 20 years experience, who have lost their job, and it's that's honestly been the hardest thing about this whole pandemic for me, has been seeing people hurt and not being able to do much to help them other than unemployment. Um, that was very hard, and there were times where it just like was so heavy, because it was just all day, every day, just people hurting, and you just doing what you could to give them just a little relief, knowing that it's not enough, and knowing that it's not really what they want. They want a job, and it's just that's by far, and it's calmed down a lot. But and thank you for reminding me of that, because that was really like March, April, May. It was the hardest part of this. It was the hardest part, and everyone liked it at first. When they were watching the Tiger King or whatever that show was, and everyone loved it then. But then once the jobs went away, it was hard, and we have to remember that we're not back. And that's why I actually support what the federal government's doing with this next round of COVID relief, because I think it's so important to get that money out to folks and create opportunities. And I think that's anything we can do to I don't want to say goose the egg, but to support growth and to support viable jobs. We need to do that, and that's really what's hard. And there was one question on here that we were talking about in terms of like health and the Clean Air Act, and right now that's one of my colleagues brought that up. And then so everyone wants clean air and everyone wants to get rid of smoking, and then but at the same time I have the casino saying, if we quit smoking here, we're going to lose 30% of our business, because in the other states where we have casinos and they quit smoking, we lost 30% of our business. And so that means 30% of the jobs gone. That means 30% of the revenue's gone. So you do these, you have to make tough decisions. And that's how it was with COVID. Nobody wanted to shut down restaurants. Nobody wanted to, shut down the entire country. But we didn't know what we didn't know back then, and it was you were making decisions based on what limited information you had. And now that we know more, we've learned to, and things have changed. We didn't have the PPP, like nobody had a mask. It's not like people were like knitting masks or sewing masks. They weren't ready in March, and so as we've built up the infrastructure that we need, and we're still not there in many places. We're going to learn to live with this, but for a lot of people, they're still suffering, and that I think has been the hardest part of this. I didn't know. Did I answer your question or not? I don't know if I answered it, but
I think you answered it to the best of your ability. I know it's a really hard spot to be in. Like you said, there's pros and cons for everything. I definitely, like you said, I think it's calming down a little bit more. But I think it's still, like, for me and like for a lot of kids I graduated with, it's still like a very real reality. Like it's still very much like first thought every time I wake up in the morning, like how am I paying my bills and things like that, right? But I think you answered it to the best of your ability, and I really thank you for giving me that time and this space, to even give you my feedback in terms of what I'm thinking about.
For sure. What I'd love to see too is two things at the federal level. One is a federal infrastructure bank. We did one probably about 70 years ago now, and a federal infrastructure bank would allow us to, borrow that money to rebuild our roads and bridges and put people in the construction trades, which then stimulates the economy. And what I'd love to see is high-speed rail through the United States from that infrastructure bank. I think that would put people to work and stimulate the economy. But the other thing that I think we need to seriously look at is bringing back some type of, like we did during the recovery from the Great Depression, either a civilian conservation corps or a works progress administration, something for young people who are able-bodied and want to work and just don't have work. I think they'd much rather do something than just get a check from the government and sit on their couch. People want to be productive and have value to their life and have meaning to their life. And I think that, those are some things at the federal level we need to look at.
And not to interrupt you, Blaine or Ashlyn, I think that even just like you said, just giving the opportunity for like constituents to like give you their feedback, like I think that's really important. Like I think it's super cool that you asked that question, and I think that like we shouldn't be shocked that our representatives are asking us like, how can I be better? So I think that's something that like through town halls, and I'm sure you do this already, through town halls and just meeting with different community groups and asking that question. Like that's a super important question to ask.
Thank you. Thanks. It's for me, and I always wonder what I can be doing better. I never feel like I'm doing enough, and it's very it drives my wife crazy. She's like, you got a family here too. But I'm always thinking of stuff, for the community. I'm always thinking of stuff for the city. And I love this city. I wouldn't have been on city council if I didn't love the city. And so always trying to just do what I can to be better. And I don't, the tough thing is when you're unable to help. That's when it's the most frustrating. But yeah, Blaine, and if you guys want to chime in with anything or any questions or how I can be better or what you think this community needs that maybe you think the state could help with.
I was going to say, I'm from Harrisburg originally. Okay. So I was recruited out of Harrisburg in the connector industry there to come up here to Erie. I think the one thing, my glasses keep reflecting. I think the one thing that as a central Pennsylvania native and coming to Erie is I don't think the rest of the state recognizes the fact that Erie's here.
That's for sure. 100% agree with you.
I'm not sure if it's anything on your plate to do or whatnot. Maybe it's on us to get a little bit louder.
I call it GOB. We're geographically out of bounds. They think we're in Ohio. Yeah. I had to explain, and I don't want to interrupt you, but I did have to explain because it was funny. I told my colleagues from Philadelphia, they got so confused. I said, I'm 3 hours from Toronto. And they're like, how is that even possible? And I was just like, I'm in Pennsylvania, I swear. I said, I'm closer to Toronto than I am to you guys by a lot.
Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah, with being, from Harrisburg, and I've traveled the 5-hour ride on 80 on the turnpike back and forth a few times. Family's still down there, so I think the only thing, for me is make sure don't forget about us down here. I know you're working towards that, and you're constantly working for us, and I appreciate that. I think it's on us now to be louder and make ourselves recognized by the rest of the state in general, and
well, definitely. I know the whole delegation, and we're very lucky, Kurt Sonny, who's in Northeast, he's a Republican, Harkins, who's on the east side of the city. And he has Lawrence Park and Wesleyville, and then I have the west side of the city, and then Bell Valley and Summit, then Rep Bizarro. And then in the far western end, we have Brad Roy, who goes down into Crawford County, and then Park Wentling, who goes down. He actually has a thin line from the lakeshore down to Mercer County. But all 5 of us care about this community and want to see it do well. Obviously, with Representative Sonny, Harkins, Bizarro, and myself actually living in Erie County, we're always fighting, and we work well together. We're always fighting for this community, and we work well together, speaking with one voice for Erie County when we're down there. And since we've been doing that, I think and I came in when they already started doing this, and I just kind of plugged into it. But they said before it was a lot harder to get things for Erie. And I don't think, we were talking about the 23 million, very few communities of our size got that much money. And part of the reason for that was we had everybody rowing in the same direction. And even our Senator Laughlin and Senator Brooks, everybody was speaking with one voice. And when you have that consensus and all, 7 of us, plus the county executive, plus the mayor, all saying the same thing, it's a lot easier for the governor to sign off on those checks. So that makes a big difference when we speak with one voice. Anybody else? I'm pointing like a there, but
I think Shayla and Blaine did pretty good. I don't have anything off the top of my head. I'm like the person who comes up with 1,000 questions 2 hours later. So
that's okay. Hey, and email me seriously, or I'm also on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I even have a Snapchat. I have a TikTok, but I'm not very good at it, and I've only done like 2 of them. That takes a lot of work for TikTok, and I don't know if I have the time for all that, but some of them are very clever. But I haven't seen a lot of politicians that are elected officials have clever TikToks. I got to find some, but But I'm available on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's pictures, that's always non-threatening and fun. And you get a mix of what I'm doing for work and my kids and my wife. So it's fun, but definitely I try to be accessible on social media because I think that's a way a lot of people communicate, even more so now, post or in the middle of the pandemic. And just trying to get the information out to folks but I try to be accessible. So please tell all your members they can follow. Most of them are just whatever it is at Bob Merski.
Yeah.
And it's real. I don't want to say I'm branded, but everything's at Bob Merski. It's just easier. No one has that name except for my dad and my grandpa who passed away and my son. So my son's he's going to have to figure out his own social media.
As a junior myself, yeah, I know the struggle.
See, now he has a different middle name than me. So at least because
there you go.
Yeah. So we won't get our mail mixed up, hopefully. So, but I want to thank you for this opportunity too. I think it's so important to hear what young folks have to say. As a young Erie professional myself, I knew that I wanted to make a difference, and I felt like when I was your age, I had a lot to offer, and I know that you have a lot to offer, and so that's important to me. That's important to me to listen, and for you to have an opportunity to ask your questions and get an answer. And what I'd love to see once we can have a real, sit down is a dialogue and just like a town hall type thing with young Erie professionals. I would love for that to make that happen. And I think that, keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing forward and try to build it as much as you can, because I think the more people you have and the more strength you have. And I think a lot of times some folks, and I felt like this even when I was in Young Erie Professionals, I felt like at the beginning, before, my friends got me in, I'm just a teacher. Like I'm professional, but I'm not really professional. But keep inviting people, keep welcoming people, because everybody, even if they're in a blue collar job or a white collar job, you guys are Erie, and you're not only the future of Erie, you're the present. And now more than ever, and you see it at all levels, in the business world, in the entertainment world, in government, young people are making a difference every day. And I know that you guys have great futures ahead of you, and they start right here. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, and I mean that. When this is done, I'd love to do it again face to face.
We'll do. I wrote it down. I've been taking notes the entire time. So
Perfect.
yeah,